Welcome to Yeshiva Daf. Shir sponsor Nishpa Sam Yaakov Shalom Lam Basitzchok. We're holding in Shavuos Daf Test. This is a Daf that was given on Shabbos. We will go through it and focus very much on the pshat of the Gemara to have for ourselves a clear understanding of the Mahalach of the Gemara. We're going to be starting the Yechezkel base in the two dots towards the end of Yechezkel base. The Gemara brings Ein b'yediyah b'tchilo v'yesh b'yediyah b'soif seir nasa b'chutz yom kippurim mechaper, that we have if there's no yediyah in the beginning, there is yediyah b'soif, so then the seir of Yom Kippurim shenasa b'chutz, the outside seir is mechaper. Now, how do we know that? This mechaper too is mikdash v'kodshav? Because the Mishnah says there's a hekesh, right? As the Mishnah basically says, how do we know that? Because it says mevad chatas kippurim, amash zeh mechaper, we have a hekesh between the inside seir and the outside seir. Says the Gemara, there's a hekesh to each other. So how do you say that the primi we mechaper on its own and also on the outside one? Meaning, we said that the seir primi is mechaper on something that has no yediyah. That has yediyah b'tchila v'lo yediyah b'soif. So eventually we'll find out if there be a carpet, so the meanwhile is toilet. Seir nasa b'chutz, what is mechaper? So mechaper, it's something which is ein lo yediyah b'tchila v'yesh lo yediyah b'soif. Why do you say the primi works in both? Well, why will you need for both? Nafkamino leicha de loyov atchitzon. He didn't do the outside one; he did only the inside one. Achas kapor achas mechaper ve'inu mechaper shtei kapors. It says achas; it does only one kapor, not two. V'nechaper chitzon adidei v'amai doi primi. Why does the chitzon do also the kapor of the primi? And what will be nafkamino? Nafkamino tuba the year bin zelazeh. Two happening in between. Omakor achas b'shon the kapor zelu te'eh lachas b'shon. There'll be only achas b'shon. Rashi explains. Shita's Rashi is. This argues a little bit. Rashi learns. It says in the pasuk achas b'shon twice. The chiper hakohen al kanois of achas b'shon. And now chatas kippurim achas b'shon yichaper olos. So achas b'shon. The first one tells you that it's done only. You can do only one kapor, not two. The second one tells you is achas b'shon. The kapara that's being done is going to be done only once a year, not twice. Now, the Taisis points out over here an interesting question. It says Taisis, when the Gemara asks why do we need primi more than chitzur, we say because maybe chitzur will be gone. So primi should do for primi and chitzur. Well, the Gemara says maybe chitzur should do for chitzur and primi. The Gemara did not say the primi is gone. You said that a two may happen in between. Why is the Gemara changing? So it says Taisis, the pshat is simple, because if I have only one, I'm going to use it for primi, not for chitzur. So if you have only one, you do only primi. So it has to be that you have one for primi, and something happens between primi and chitzur, for the chitzur to have to mechaper the primi. So if Kiveigo or Gildi Rasha says, what do you mean? If I have only one, I have to do korban, I have to do a goyim. Right? Remember, Yom Kippur, there's three seir. Seir primi, seir chitzur, seir la'azazel. The primi and la'azazel, they have a goyim. They do a raffle, and you decide which one goes to the cliff and which one goes inside. So if I have only one, I'm going to do it. Rat says do it inside. No, you have to do a goyim. That's a question of Kiveigo. So the few answers of that chayim. One answer of that chayim is that what it takes means to say if you have only one, it means not one. You have two. One with simba azazel. What you'll do the second one? You'll use it for primi, not for chitzur. That's what this means. It doesn't mean one. It means one out of two. Others say there may be, if you don't have two, you have only one. I will not do azazel. I'll do only primi. And others say without a goyim. Others say the opposite. If I have only one, I'll do la azazel, not for primi, because primi needs a goyim. What Taisus means to say you'll do it for primi means the twin of the primi. The same. Something more like Bishwal Domain Beidiyah without Tess without the top. Sorry. Bishwal Domain Beidiyah B'tchil V'yesh Beidiyah B'soif by Korbanim. Going to introduce a new Shita. Shita Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Shmuel says that we learned the whole time in our Mishnah that you have to have Yediyah B'tchila and Yediyah B'soif to bring Korban El V'yagid. Rabbi Shmuel says no. Even with no Yediyah B'tchila, like any other Chet, you bring a korban elevir. So if you hold you have by korbanu, ser nasa v'chutz amayim mechaper. What's going to be mechaper? It can't be yesh v'diyah b'tchil v'en v'diyah b'soif. Yesh v'diyah b'tchil yesh v'diyah b'soif. Because now you do bring korban elevir. Hashem b'yediyah b'tchil v'lo b'soif. Because the mechaper has no yediyah at all. So the more I see or going to see or shechadosh mechaper. Yeah, for that we have a courtyard yudo two other seer. Siri goes, Siri Chadashim. So there was some like a mayor. He holds like a sheet of a mayor that was said in the Mishnah. He holds the Siri Gold, Siri Rosh Chadashim, and Seir Nasa B'chut of Yom Kippur all mechaper on the same thing. So according to this, why is Chitzu Primi compared to each other? They're not doing the same thing. So what? Primi no mechaper Shar Averis and Chitzu no mechaper Shar Averis. To tell you that it's not a unique one, but it's not doing kapar in other things, like the Primi. It's not doing kapar in other Averis. Only a Tumas Migdosh B'Kachov. So the Shebi deal with Chil V'Le B'Soif Go Leave Sira Chadosh B'Chapi Levi Rabudo. So Rabudo brings this thing before we maybe go into the Gemara. Just to mention, we mentioned at Shabbos is that the Tosis mentions over here. It says Achas V'Shana. Says it's not Achas V'Shana because if you bring a korban eventually, so it won't be Achas V'Shana. So Siyar Nasa B'Fim, which is Yeshu Yedir B'Tchilo, Yeshu Yedir B'Soif. If a person finds out later, it will be a korban. So it's not Achas V'Shana. So it's you're right, it's not Achas V'Shana. But it's only Achas V'Shana Kavua. You have a specific date to do it. The korban elevator can bring any day. So for this we have an interesting answer. Just to mention this, because this daf was learned on Shabbos, Parshas Achri Mois, Achri Gedoshi. In Parshas Achri Mois, we have the Parsha of Yom Kippur. And there it says, it's a fascinating thing. If you look through the Parsha, the first part of the Parsha doesn't mention Yom Kippur once. It just says, Al Yova B'chol Eis LaKodesh, B'zoy Shav V'Ar LaKodesh. Our Kodesh has to cover the Kodesh with Kodesh Kadosh in a certain way. It doesn't mention Yom Kippur until you get to the end of the Parsha. There's many other questions, which we're not going to go into right now. But the Chayei Adam, as a Sefer Chachmas Adam. And at the end of Sefer Chachmas Adam, he writes, I have some space in my book, or my Sefer, I want to say something in the name of my Mechutin. Who's the Mechutin of the Chayei Adam? The Vilna Gaon. What is he saying in the name of the Vilna Gaon? It says the following. That Parshas Achri Mois, when it says that you can go to Yom Kippur, you can go into Kodesh Kadoshim, by Aaron HaKoyen, you can go to Kodesh Kadoshim not only in Yom Kippur, you can go to Kodesh Kadoshim every single day. The Kohen doesn't make this up, he's based on a Medrash, but it's not so clear what the Medrash says, and not to explain the Medrash. Aaron HaKoyen is unique, different than any other Kohen. Every Kohen Gadol can go to Kodesh Kadoshim only in Yom Kippur. Aaron HaKoyen can go every single day, and there's some changes in the Avodah which we're not going into right now. Ask the Chayei Adam on that, but it says Achas V'Shana. So the Chayei Adam answer says Achas V'Shana tell you that only once a year it's required. The rest of the year it's if he wants to. According to the Tosis over here, it's very Gishmak. Achas V'Shana it's Kavua. Any other day of the year, it can be any day. There's no Kvias, and that's why Achas V'Shana works, even according to this Gevaldik Pshat of the Vilna Gaon. Okay. So the one says, the book quotes the Mishnah, Shem B'Yediyah B'Tchila V'Le B'Soif, Sir Regalim Sechadosh B'Chav B'Tiv Rabbi. The Rabbi holds that Rosh Chodesh and Regalim are mechaper and something that has no Yediyah at all. Le B'Tchila V'Le B'Soif. Say, well, my Rabbi Mashur, my time Rabbi, what is the reason of Rabbi? What's the makar? Amakor V'Seir Ezim Echod Chatas L'Hashem. By the Seir Rosh Chodesh says, Chatas L'Hashem. Chet Shem Akir Bo El Hashem Yes Seir Zim Mechaper. Chatas L'Hashem. Chatas the only Hashem knows. The Malin mentions that by oil it says many times oil Hashem. But oil Hashem is very clear because oil is mechapel hurei halev. That's very clear. Only Hashem knows. By chatas usually you know he did a chit. So what is chatas Hashem? Ain't the idea of tchila v'loy b'soif. V'ayin v'aylik shlokish dom shlokish. We need something else. A different drasha we learn Maseches Chulim. Man ishtana seir shel shchodesh shenamar bo l'Hashem. Why by shchodesh says that seir l'Hashem? Omar Kadosh Baruch Hu seir zeh kapara alai shemiat tisarech. Bring a seir for me, then I reduce the size of the moon. That's what we bring it. We'll get back to that in one moment. So that's what you dash over here. Kelemako al Hashem, my la Hashem. Should say, Korban al Hashem, it's for Hashem, right? It's la Hashem. Like that only Hashem knows of that. Maybe it's only for that. You can't chatas Hashem. My la Hashem, shas v'netarti, la Hashem, it doesn't say al Hashem or Hashem, tells you both. Maybe it's mechaper other things. Meaning Kippur comes Zman Kavua. Rosh Chodesh comes Zman Kavua 12 months a year. So the same with this mechaper only do Mikdash V'Kachov. So also this is two Mikdash V'Kachov. Which one? Ain't be a deal of B'Tchil V'Le B'Soif. Just mentioned briefly. What does it mean to be kapara Kadosh Baruch Hu? Today's brings over here. That's what the Rif. The kapara is not Kadosh Baruch Hu. The kapara is Am Yisrael. Kapara Am Yisrael Kadosh Baruch Hu was Krivei Azmar for them to bring kapara. But as we will Be'ez Hashem, mention let the Shor B'Chshav on the daf. There's a Oibek over here, as the Rita points out, Al Pi Kabbalah, in Yod Gedoyli Vat Le'Behoid, that what's the idea over here? The idea is that Kishbul Kivyoch has a kapar. Says the Maharal in Guraya and Veragoylo, that the kapara that you have on Hashem, kapara is not to rectify a sin. Kapara is to fill in a missing void. When a Kishbul is Bebat Yerach, he has to fill up the missing void. Beizan Zechavar explains that this is really reflective of the Bria itself. The Bria, the moon, is the Mekabel, is the receiver. The receiver in this world is incomplete. That's what he has to do Avodah. So you keep the world is incomplete. The world is incomplete, so therefore you have the moon is diminished. Now the kapara is that it gives you the chance to recomplete yourself. Every Rosh Chodesh, the moon is reborn. Give you the chance to become back to its original potential. Abisol says every Rosh Chodesh, they'll be reborn like the moon. That's why there is a kapara over here. This is what we're talking about. Be'ez Hashem more about this in the Shor Machshav on the Daf. Says the Gemara. That's very good. So you read this, says Rosh Chodesh and Regalim or Mechaper Shein Lo Yediyah V'Lo B'Tchila V'Lo B'Soif. So Rosh Chodesh I just mentioned because it says Seir LaHashem. What about Regalim? Seir Regalim Inolim. Chitei Me'at Tam Ketan Mishwal. Maybe you learn like a Tana Mishwal. It causes not kavua. So the problem is Mechaper like you Kippur and Rosh Chodesh. It's the way you can live. You can't learn this way. Even though Rosh Chodesh you can taught you. Rosh Chodesh is every month. Even though Kippur can be Ruben Kapara, so it does a much bigger kapara because it's Mechaper and Yom Kippur itself is Mechaper all of theirs. I mean, not this Seir, but you have a kapara and Yom Kippur all of theirs. So maybe not. Maybe you won't be able to learn from here. The Chiteva says the one that doesn't obey Hagamri Rosh Chodesh Yom Kippur V'Lo Pechina. What about Rosh Chodesh? We learn from Yom Kippur that it's Mikdash Kavli Kotshov. It's very different. Hasum kapara michtaktivo gilui milsa b'alma. There it says kapara. It says chatos LaHashem. You have kapara. Question is, what is the kapara? Is it kapara Mikdash Kotshov or all the averis? So we just have a gilui milsa from Yom Kippur. Even though it's not exactly the same, but I already know it's kapara. Just asking which kapara. Here you want to learn the whole thing. I want to learn Regalim from the entire idea of kapara. And look at the Omar of Chamar, B'chanina, Seir, V'Seir, and V'Seir, V'Seir. This is Josh going to bring here next half. It says, on all the Seirim of the Muyamim, it says V'Seir. To be Rabbi, to connect it to the first Seir that's mentioned by Rosh Chodesh. V'Yikru Seir Regalim, the Seir Rosh Chodesh. Now, Seir Rosh Chodesh, Ein Mechapim, El She'im, B'Yediyah, Lo B'Tchila, Lo B'Soif. Seir Rosh Chodesh, Mechapim, still he has no Yediyah at all. Seir Regalim, Mechapim, El She'im, B'Yediyah, Lo B'Tchila, Lo B'Soif. So you have a Hekesh, one to each other. So the Gemara is going to mention next half the idea you can't learn a Hekesh from a Hekesh. Rashi brings over here that here, how can you learn the Hekesh from Rosh Chodesh? Because how is Rosh Chodesh learning from Yom Kippur? The Binyanah is Mamatzinu. We find Yom Kippur that it's Kavua, so also that's the Tana Mishwal, Rosh Chodesh Kavua. And now I'm learning from there by Hekesh to Regalim. That's fine, Hekesh from Binyanah. So Tosh really asked in Haftas of Daleth that the Gemara in Zvachim questions if you can learn a Hekesh from Binyanah or not. And the more brings a machlekes about that. That's why it's so partial over here to do a Hekesh for Binyanah. But then he asks another question. So he says, what's the Binyanah? That you learn Rosh Chodesh Yom Kippur. And how do I know Yom Kippur itself that's Mechapet to us Mikdash Kotshov? Because I have a Hekesh for Pnimi Techitzu, where we said where we started the daf. The Mishnah Davis of daf is literally Chitzu and Pnimi. So Chitzu you know from a Hekesh. He learns Binyanah to Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Chodesh learned a Hekesh to Regalim. So it's a Hekesh from a Hekesh. That's what he's asked in Rashi and Haftas of daf. So one of the answers in Rashi is in Yudah B'daf, at the end of the Sugyo, Toysis brings Rabbi Rutam and Sefer HaYosher. Sefer HaYosher says, when do I say Hekesh can't learn from Hekesh? When you learn the entire Hekesh from each other. Meaning, let's say you have point A, B, and C. B learns from A and Hekesh, C learns from B and Hekesh. The Hekesh is X. So if A transfers to B the X through Hekesh, you can't transfer from B to C a Hekesh of X. But if A learns to be X, and in B it's written Y, and now C is learning for B X and Y, then you could learn the X, even though the X came from Hekesh. When you can learn the Hekesh of C from B to learn Y, because Y is written in B. Once you're learning half, you can learn the whole thing. So that's what happens over here. True, Chitzu learns from Pnimi regarding Mikdash Kotshov, but Rosh Chodesh has his own lead with it, says Chatas LaHashem. The only thing you learn from that is that's Mikdash Kacha. So I take both together, and then I can learn that to Regalim according to Rashi. This was just a little bit of a taste, and we're going to see B'Sechet Zvalim. So when Bayi Lu Kyomer, Reviewed Al Shem Yediyah Lebetchilim Lebesoif. Reader says, you have no idea, you have the kapara of the Seir. How do you mean the Bechet She'et Soif Livoda? We're talking about a Chet that nobody knows and nobody will know. But if you find out about it, Rashi says people know about it. So you'll find out about that. There's a right to the Achron. If someone knows his friend did Chet B'Shegeg, should he tell him? So for our words, not for yes, because it's Soif Livoda, right? Soif Livoda, people will tell the guy he made a sin by B'Shegeg. So maybe here, maybe the seed is v'chap is not regoli, but seed has v'chutz. Even if it's about to be known, right now, only Hashem knows it, at least copy this person. We call it Hashem Karidim. We call it El Hashem, and he has kapar of Sira Regoli. Tashvat Tanya Hashem Yedil Betchilo Lebesoif Vechet Shesoif Livoda. There's no idea that we get ahead, and even a chet that he will know, but now he doesn't know. Sira Regoli, Sira Chadashi V'chapi Divrei Abido. So then they're all V'chaper. According to Abido, they're V'chaper. Very good. So that's the Shita of Abido. Shimon, what does Shimon say? Sira Regoli V'chaper Avlos Sira Shchadish. If you remember the Mishnah, Shimon said Sira Regoli V'chaper Shem Yedil Lebetchil V'Lobesayf. Sira Shchadish V'chaper is something else. Tor She'ochal Esatom. A different language. So it seems when you look at the Mishnah at the beginning, that Shimon and Abido are very close to each other. Right? Abido says Regoli and Rosh Chodesh or V'chaper Shem Yedil Lebetchil V'Lobesayf. Shimon says no, only Regoli is V'chaper that Rosh Chodesh is V'chaper Tor She'ochal Esatom. But now let's see the inner reasoning of Shimon. Says the Gemara. It says there B'Pasha, when in Pasha's Shmini, when Moshe Rabbeinu comes to Aaron the Kohen, it says, why did you burn the Seir of Rosh Chodesh? You need the Seir of Rosh Chodesh. It says, Dorish Moshe. Why you need it? One, let's say Zavod Ha'edo. You need a kapara. The high court is the Rosh Chodesh Ktiv. The only form of tzitz. You learn from tzitz. It says by tzitz. What is the tzitz v'chaper? Or korbanos that came into it. So it's v'chaper of the meat, or the flesh, or the meat. So here we're talking about tuas basar. Which tuas basar? If a tar ate a tuas basar. So well, who said? Maybe by tzitz, you have, it's v'chaper or korbanos. So here's v'chaper korbanos, now the person who ate it b'tuba. So well, over the eight, it says over the eight, over of the people. If they learn from each other, so maybe you'll say Rosh Chodesh can do the kapara of itself, to mechaper on Tomeh that ate tar, on Tar that ate Tomeh, and to mechaper also the karbanos. Now, if the tzitz is broken, you don't have the tzitz. Ovid is lo sheyachid, tell you only one aveir, not two. Tzitz should be mechaper on the oiliv and on a person who ate Tomeh. Now, if the two teir between wearing the tzitz and bringing Rosh Chodesh. The pasuk that we said before, Moshe Rabbeinu tells Aaron, only there Rosh Chodesh v'chaper, not something else. We just said the Rosh Chodesh, it says over the Eidah, it's over the people. The Eidah will Kadoshim, so v'chaper the people, not all the karbanos. They also receive over the Kochim. Kochim Ashma, Kochim Leidu, Rashi says it's dashing for the extra hay. Hot Kochim. So Chap only that, and now something else. That's what Rosh Chodesh V'chaper Torah Shachas HaTorah. So Hashkat see Rosh Chodesh to V'chaper Torah Shachas HaTorah. Siri Goy to V'chaper She'ei B'idil L'B'tchila V'L'B'soy B'Dol. How do you know Siri Goy to V'chaper for something he has no idea? I don't realize that. According to Rabbi Yehuda, how do I know that Siri Goy V'chaper She'ei B'idil L'B'tchila V'L'B'soy, we just saw before? Because you learned from Rosh Chodesh, Seir V'Seir. But according to Shimon, Rosh Chodesh is not mechaper of that. Rosh Chodesh is mechaper Torah Shachal Tzatame. So how do you know we're going? So we're starting by saying, Kedal B'Avchal B'Avchil Seir V'Seir, which still being the same Joshua. Achar V'Seir V'Seir, then you learn from Rosh Chodesh that some kapara of Tumas Mikdash V'Kachel. So the word that Vida with Aleph, Yidgush Seir Golim V'Seir Rosh Chodashim. Bas Yid Rosh Chodesh B'Bil Sed Kodesh B'Chaper. It's something has to do with Kodesh, Kedusha. Asir Regalim and Bilsa Kosh Bechaper. Let's go Vechitago, Nechaber do Shchodesh. Okay, so you do maybe it's Bechaper Tor Shechol Zatami. Hamir and Oisa maybe Acher Oisa. There's Oisa. So Vechitabo, Nechaber do Kippur, maybe Bechaper on. Yesh lo Yedio, but ain't lo Yedio Betchil Yesh lo Yedio Besoif. Hamir Achas Mashava, Kapor Zultel, Achas Mashava. That's the Joshua said before. It's only once a year. And by Bechaper. So what we have left, this is a good summary of the Mishnah. What will we go Bechaper according to Reb Shimon? Something has idea beginning and end. How about Karban? That's Karban Olav Yari. That's the beginning of the Mishnah. He has the doesn't know. Now we saw the next part of the Mishnah. The Siyad has to be of Yom Kippur is Bechaper in it. Have idea in the beginning, but the no idea beginning, yes, idea at the end. So then we have Siyad Asa B'chutz. We says Bechaper. It says Achas B'shol only one. What are you left with? And Bechaper should be a deal in Betchila B'lei B'Sayif. You have to say it's Bechaper until he has no idea at all. In other words, the Rabbi Yehuda, we saw to summarize what we're holding right now. We brought with going through the Mishnah, the different shitas of the Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda's shita of the Mishnah is Tzir Shchodesh, Tzir Regalim are Bechaper on Elu Yediyah B'Tchil V'Lei B'Sayif. That's what it is. So that's what's Bechaper. Comes the. How do we know that? How do we know that? Because Shchodesh, he says Bechaper Yediyah B'Tchil V'Lei B'Sayif, because it says it's Chatas LaHashem. That's how you know there's no idea. Hi, what about, how do you know that it's exactly this and not something else? Because you learn from Yom Kippur. How do you know Regalim? Veseir. So it's the same exact thing. That's what Rabbi Yehuda's shita is. Shimon doesn't learn that Yom Kippur is Bechaper, and Yom Kippur is Bechaper on Kachim, Torah Shechol Zakredish. So how do you know when Regalim is Bechaper? Because it says Veseir, I know it's Bechaper, so it has to do with Kodesh or Mikdash. And what do I have left? According to Shimon, we say that none of them are Bechaper. At this stage, as we'll see in the next half, none of them Bechaper on each other. Meaning each chait has its own korban. So Yishchodesh is a Torah Shechal Zatom. Now what else do we have? Yesh Yediyah B'Tchila, Yesh Yediyah B'Sayif. That's korban Olav Yari. Yesh Yediyah B'Tchila, Yesh Yediyah B'Sayif. Siyad Asa B'Fim. Ein Yediyah B'Tchila, Yesh Yediyah B'Sayif. Siyad Asa B'Chutz. Or Yom Kippur. So what do I have left? The only thing I have left is Ein Yediyah B'Tchila V'Lo B'Sayif. No idea at all. So it's the only thing that I have over here. The only thing I have over here, that's why see Regalim or Bechaper on that, because I have nothing else, and we know it's Kachim, has to do with Kodesh because of Sir Shchodesh. So even though Rabbi Yehuda and Shimon the Mishnah sound very similar to each other, they have a completely different drushes how they get to their conclusion what it is Bechaper on. We'll stop over here.